City University Television presents the American Theater Wing Seminars. Working in the theater. This seminar, play script, director.
It is my pleasure to welcome you to the American Theater Wing Seminars on Working in the Theater. These are coming to you from the Graduate Center of the City University of New York, which is located on 42nd Street, the heart of the theater, the heart of Broadway, and the heart of the beat that is the magic of live theater. It is here that Broadway, off-Broadway, and off-Broadway all come to share the wealth of theater. The American Theater Wing is known for its Tony Awards, and justly so. We are very proud of this award. It is given annually not for the longest run or the best box office, but for having achieved a degree of excellence in the craft of theater. And that really is at the crux of everything that the American Theater Wing does. We look for excellence in the theater, and we eventually try to bring that excellence to our year-round programs. We go to hospitals, nursing centers, and aid centers, and we bring live theater so that those who cannot come out to the theater have it brought to them. We have a program called Introduction to Broadway, and it is just that. It introduces the excitement and the magic of Broadway to young students from the high schools of the 5 boroughs, and it is done in cooperation with the Board of Education and the generosity of the producers. It is the students' very first time, in many cases, not only of going to the theater, but of going out of their neighborhoods so that they see that there is another area for them. And then we also have a program that is called Theater in Schools, and we bring directors and playwrights and performers and costume designers to the schools to discuss the theater, what goes on in the theater, how you work in the theater, and that you needn't be a performer or a dancer. You can do lighting and you can do costumes and you can be in the theater. It's a wonderful world, and we are opening their imagination to it, and we're hoping that we are giving them role models, as well as developing the audience of the future. And then these seminars, they're one of the, I think, most interesting, exciting, and unique programs that anyone can have. And each year, twice a year, we bring together the people that make the theater work. They're designed to give you an in-depth look of what it is to work in the theater, from the viewpoint of the performer, of the director, playwright, and the costume designer, and the very last and most important, the people that bring it all together, the producers. And so we come to this program, which is on the production, and the wonderful production of Love, Valor, and Compassion, which is on Broadway right now. And we have the producing team that brought it from Manhattan Theater Club to Broadway, and they in turn will try to take you along the trip with them. On our program today is Brendan Gill, who is co-chairing. Brendan is a member of the Board of Directors of the American Theater Wing, author, critic. George White, who is president of the O'Neill Theater Center, director, teacher, and great friend of the theater and the wing. They in turn will introduce this distinguished panel to you. Thank you for being here.
On my far right is Joe Mantello, threatens to be the most celebrated young director of his time, and member of the Circle Rep and of Naked Angels. Next to Joe is Victoria Bailey, the general manager of the Manhattan Theater Club, And on my near right is Barry Grove, Managing Director of the Manhattan Theatre Club.
On my far left, downstage left, not so far, actually, is Helene Davis, who is the press representative for the Manhattan Theatre Club. Next to her is Terrence McNally, the playwright of Love, Valor, Compassion, who is also a playwright of A Perfect Ganesh, and the Lisbon Traviata, and vice president of the Dramatists Guild. And immediately on my left is Lynne Meadow, who has been the artistic director of the Manhattan Theatre Club since she was about 3, and has produced and directed over 100 American and world premieres. Very distinguished.
We're talking about the whole production and how it is brought into the theater as a whole. And so I would love to ask, as the first question of Terrence and all of them together, the question of how everybody felt about the title. Terrence makes difficulties with his titles. Ganesh was a very mysterious word to see in print anywhere, and then to have these 3 words has proved difficult for some people that I know to keep them in order and not to insert connectives of various kinds to turn it into a sentence. Now, when you first said to everybody, "Have I got a title, Love, Valor, Compassion?" what did everybody say?
Oh. Well, first I had to say the title very distinctly. I'd go, Love, pause, Valor, Compassion. That didn't stop it from very soon being referred to as Love, Valour, Compassion. It was very distressing to me, my play about the garment industry. No one said I couldn't, no one said it was bad, but I didn't feel anyone liked it. But I liked it, and I know why I chose it many years ago, 4 or 5 years ago, when the New Yorker, your magazine, was running the Cheever journals. He had an entry in his journal about he came across a man in the woods yelling Love, Valor, Compassion, just screaming it out. Heard this voice, and I just jotted the phrase down, and it stuck with me. The second reason I wanted to use that title was I thought it would raise the stakes for me as a writer. This is very personal, but if you call a play Love, Valor, Compassion with exclamation points, you better write the best play you can.
No,
you know, and that's one of the reasons I chose it.
That's a thrilling reason.
Yeah.
Oh, God, that's a good reason.
But it's very personal, and I don't usually tell people that. But
No, but that is, but and also, but starting back too, because that is, I agree with Brendan. You've had a long association, obviously, with the Manhattan Theatre Club, which is really the premier place for developing work, I think, now, going on to moving it into New York. How did you, first of all, you've had so many plays with them, and you've almost become, or are, in effect, something that is rare in this society, almost the nearest thing we have, I think, to a resident playwright. How did that all start?
Well, maybe 10 years ago, I had a play close in Philadelphia. It was called It's Only a Play. At the time it was called Broadway, and I was very discouraged. I don't know, I thought having a play close in Philadelphia was the most shameful thing a human being could do, such as my ego. And at any rate, there was a director, John Tillinger, who saw the play and said, you know, if you ever rewrite that play, I think there's a lot of good stuff in it. I'd like to do it. And I know this place called Manhattan Theatre Club. I'd actually worked with them 10 years before that with Bad Habits, before they
That's
moved.
the name of a play.
Bad Habits, yes. They'd worked on my Bad Habits. And so that's the simplest way of putting it. I rewrote the play. I got my self-confidence as a playwright back, which is a terrible thing to lose, and with the Philadelphia experience, which is exactly what it had done to me. And during a preview of It's Only a Play, Lynne said to me, we want to produce your next play. She didn't say, send us your next play. She said, we will produce your next play. And it was about December 21st, I think, and I said, that's the best Christmas present I will ever receive, and it's still true 8 years later, because in the past, no, it's 10 years now we've been doing plays at the new location. We've done 8 plays in 10 years, and their commitment to me has been unwavering, and I wish more producers would make the same commitment to an American playwright, because there are a lot of good playwrights out there. They don't have a home. They are forced to take their plays and beg producers to do their work. And I think Love, Valor, Compassion talks about unconditional love, and that's what some more American playwrights need a lot of, and I have it, and I'm very lucky. I'm not the only one. They've made an enormous commitment to Richard Greenberg, to Beth Henley. There are several other playwrights, Pete Gurney. So I'm not the only one. But without the support of Manhattan Theatre Club, it's not support, it's unconditional love support. I would not be sitting here today with some of the plays, because that enables me to write a play called Love, Valor, Compassion, because they're going to produce it. They're not going to produce a play that they think will be a bigger hit than the last one I wrote, and that's allowed my work, I think, not to repeat itself, and I hope I haven't, and I try not to, but it's such a team effort putting a play on, and I think playwrights get much too much praise when we do our work halfway well, and without the right background, the fertile soil, none of this would have happened, and it's just so important, and I'm not being overly generous. I'm being I'm telling you what it's really like to be a playwright. Most playwrights are unsupported by the theater community. You know, give us a hit and we'll do it. Show us that your play is bigger and better and da-da than the other guy's play. Maybe we'll do it. They're not saying to the playwrights, we'll do your play because we believe in you as a developing artist.
And there was a tradition in the past, going all the way back, God knows, to Shakespeare, where you had a company, where you had back support all the way through. And so you're describing something. I was about to say that it has the sound of a family, but the family is in such disgrace nowadays that that's become a pejorative term. I won't say family, but it's almost family.
This is not a dysfunctional family. No, I think it is a family. And people say to me, why do you write for the same actors over and over? Because they're wonderful actors, and I'm very lucky that people like Nathan Lane and Tony Heald want to be in my plays. And this is what Shakespeare and Chekhov and Moliere, playwrights traditionally have had actors to write for, and suddenly this business that you do a play and you never see the people ever again, I just don't want to work that way. Nathan and I work in shorthand, you know. It's great because we've done 5 plays together.
Now, is that also a reason that you are so wonderfully fruitful, so productive, because you have this? Because how many plays have you done now? You've done a lot.
I know I've done 10 at MTC. I don't know how many. My pre-MTC life.
But how did it all come about? How did it all begin to gel into Manhattan Theatre Club?
I was going to, because I have a little background with it, but I wanted to talk to the mom here. We're going to keep this family metaphor going. Yes, a 3-year-old mother. Yes. Okay. You might give us, because Manhattan Theatre Club is is a unique institution, and on its way to Broadway, if you will, has a kind of evolution of faith, and that the same thing that you have, Terrence, you know, having experienced that. But Lynne, give us a little history, and then also picking up on where you got the idea for this kind of commitment to writers. But bring us back into
I think
time.
Our commitment to writers is part of the fabric of the theater that Barry and I have worked at for 20 years. The initial idea of this theater was to support writers and to do new work. And I think it was the very first season of work, which you remember, George, we had an event called the New York Theater Strategy Festival, in which we did 23 plays by new writers in every room, every bathroom, every upstairs and downstairs basement. And in a way, that was laying the groundwork in a very primitive way for what was to be a lifelong commitment on all of our parts. And as the theater has grown...
You also you got thrown out of your first place.
That's right. We did. That was not because of the New York Theater Strategy Festival.
No. Yes.
We lasted for a while. But then, as Barry will tell you, that we ran into real estate problems, and you knew them well. And we moved to our new home at City Center 10 years ago.
Now, how was that done? Well, how did you get the space? Whom did you
we had this early space on 73rd Street. The theater began there in this ramshackle brownstone that Lynne described earlier. And suddenly we became one of the earliest victims of what is now a common occurrence of sort of the arts crisis in real estate as prices rose rapidly in New York. And we began to look everywhere. And one of the people we went to see was Jerry Schoenfeld of the Schubert Organization, who directed us over towards City Center. We certainly knew the large space upstairs, but downstairs was a wide open basement that had little going on in it at the time. And with the help of the City of New York, the Public Development Corporation, we were able to construct 2 off-Broadway-sized theaters, and with the blessing of the unions, because those theaters exist inside the Broadway district, as it were, we were able to create a permanent home there. Since then, we've sort of grown by leaps and bounds, so we're not only producing there, we're producing in a host of other places. Richard Greenberg's play is now just begun at American Place, and a number of other venues are involved. And of course, we're now at the Walter Kerr with Love, Valor, Compassion. But City Center, I think, became the home for all of this activity. I think the point I just add as well is the commitment is not just from all of us to the artists. The commitment's really from the audience to the artists. We have some 18,000 subscribers. I'll come back to your original question. It doesn't matter what the play is called to that audience. I mean, they really are committed to seeing Terrence's body of work just as we're committed to producing.
How does that subscription work now that you're on Broadway? How does that subscription, do you honor all of your subscribers on Broadway?
All of them had originally seen the play in the first 12 weeks of the run at City Center. But what did happen is that we had extended the play at City Center for 3 or 4 weeks while we were still figuring out what would next happen. And in the course of making the decision to go to the Walter Kerr, moved some of the single ticket buyers over to the Walter Kerr.
That's a beautiful theater.
It is. Yes, it
wonderful theater. Now, can you get a kind of franchise on that theater in the future?
Well, it's an exciting idea. It's a good idea. Absolutely.
But that would be wonderful to have.
I want to go back to what is the reason for having gone to Broadway?
That's what I was going to ask. Who
all right, I asked it first. Okay.
You got me.
Well, I think there are a lot of different answers around the table, but clearly this play is exceptional. I can say that because I didn't write it and I didn't direct it. It has resonated with audiences of all kinds, young, old, straight, gay, suburban, city. The response at City Center was phenomenal to the play, and the response really dictated a need for a much bigger space. A lot of people wanted to see it. We sold out very quickly at City Center in the first 12-week run, and at the same time, obviously, the economics of Broadway are daunting, so the challenge became trying to find a way to make that work.
How did you add to your producing team for Broadway?
The one major addition, really other than that, it's the Manhattan Theater Club, is that we went to the Jujamson organization, and Rocco Landesman very graciously not only gave us the Walter Kerr Theater, but made a non-recourse loan to the Manhattan Theater Club. So we continue to be the sole producers of the play, but they provided some enormous help in terms of financing.
It's very expensive to move.
Yeah.
It is the team. Helene, Victoria Bailey, Michael Bush, who is not here now, who's the Associate Artistic Director of the theater, and very instrumental in bringing this production to life. This is the team and the staff.
Well, let's talk about also the choice of director, because you yourself are a consummate director. And how does that come about? Who decides? Obviously, you decide, but why?
Yes, but well, in this case, I think Terrence mentioned to us that he was very interested in a young director, Joe Mantello, and Michael Bush had a meeting with Joe. And I remember I was not present at the meeting, but Michael called me after the meeting and said, "This guy really knows how to do this play." He said, the first thing he said is, there's got to be a house. There has to be a house. The first thing that you see is a house. And Michael said he exuded such a feeling of confidence and belief and conviction and love of this play. And Terrence met with him, obviously, felt very strongly about him. And I think, speaking as an outsider, I would say it was love at first sight.
What was your reaction?
I don't remember being very confident. But,
well, you were a great actor.
Yeah, well.
In addition to being a great director.
It's a very strange sort of relationship, to form that kind of relationship when you don't really know each other. I've described it a little bit as sort of, it's like going on a blind date and you're going to be married the next day. So you kind of, it's very, very hard. And how do you talk about your entire vision of a play, and if that's even possible without, excluding what happens in the room, and just sort of, but I think I just sort of said I really love the play. I think it would be fun. As I remember, I don't remember saying anything terribly insightful.
You did say, "I know how to do this play."
That's fairly confident.
And if I'm going to get into a plane, I want to hear the pilot say, "I know how to get this plane to L.A." Not, "I think I can maybe get it there." You were very confident, and you said it would be fun to do this play, and you also said you love the play. And the image Lynne spoke about is so important. The first stage direction of the script says a bare stage. Now, what does that mean? It means I don't want a lot of scenery. But Joe said, I think we need a model of the house to locate for the audience where this bare stage is going to turn into all sorts of different things in the next 3 hours. But we need some point of reference at the very beginning. That was Joe's idea, and that's, we all thought,
How did you
well,
know
that's
about
smart.
Joe Mantello, actor as director?
Well, he had directed 3 hotels
Yes.
that we knew about.
Fat Men in Skirts.
I thought I hadn't seen.
And Imagining Brad, a wonderful play
Oh,
at
right.
Circle Rep.
Right.
That I'd seen 4 years before, and I thought was the best new American playwright. And Peter Hedges, and the play was not a big hit, but I thought, what a wonderful playwright and what a wonderful director. And I file all this away. I go to the theater a lot. I don't wait till they become Joe Mantello. I find them when they're Joe Mantello. And they're hireable.
I think what's also interesting, just to point out, if we're talking about a process here, is that someone saying, I know how to do a play, it's not obvious. Having Terrence's play, it was not obvious how to do the play, nor with any play, but in particular, this play could have been done a million different ways. And it's only if you had seen it done badly would you know, in addition, how great Joe's work on the piece was, I think.
Where
Where
did
does the stage designer come in? Now, you and Joe have got together. Joe said we have to have the house, we have to have the model. So the stage designers already in the picture.
We both realized the choice of designer was very important, more important perhaps in this play than, say, Lips Together, which is a more, quote, realistic set. And Joe suggested Loy Arsenis, who's someone whose work I'd admired. Then they went off and worked together and developed a design. It ended up being a very simple design concept, but Joe can speak of that, because I was not at those meetings until they had a chance to do their first draft.
Loy and I have worked together since I started directing down at Circle Rep. Tanya Berezin sort of put us together, and so, again, like Terrence and Nathan, there's such shorthand there, and I thought that his sensibility, was absolutely perfect for this play because it's so spare and so elegant, and there's a kind of a painterly quality to his work that I thought would. Where the play would just sit nicely, and we just would have a series of meetings, always coming back to what is essential for the storytelling. We didn't want a lot of moving parts. I really just wanted it. I felt like it needed to just be the actors coming together to tell the story and to get out of the way of the play, so that there was a playful quality to it and a kind of a homemade. I don't know. I don't even know how to describe it, but I didn't think that there should be beds, and I didn't want to see a lot of the house.
And yet the other method also works. Where if you want a beach house on Fire Island, you can have one that looks as if you want to move into it tomorrow.
Right.
Yeah, right. Oh, that's fantastic.
I don't think this play you could design that way. I don't think Joe. There's a reason you write bare stage, and what you really mean is you don't want beds and turn. Some people who read the play said, well, you're going to need at least 3 turntables and an elevator. Yeah. And I said, no, I know. I said, no, I don't want that. I wouldn't have written bare stage. And they said, well, how are you going to do all this? I said, I'm going to find the director and designer who know how to do it. I don't know how to do it. I'm not a... Playwrights don't have to design their own sets, but they have a sensibility, and you find the people who share that sensibility and solve the problems together. The same as with casting. I didn't write this play with a lot of people in mind. Everyone said, oh, well, you wrote such a great part for Nathan Lane. Nathan was never intended to be in this play. It just, Neil Simon's short run became our good fortune, and Nathan was free. So it's ironic that people think I wrote that part for Nathan. And
Although
one of the
Nathan
few
does
parts
have
I haven't written for Nathan.
I was going to say, he has a
Past few years.
tradition with he's another part of the family.
But I didn't write this for him, but he could step in.
Where does the rest of the family come in?
It's Tori, what do you do?
Well, I'm the general manager, so I'm charged with the day-to-day responsibilities, along with contracts, budgets. I work with Michael Bush, with Michael Moody, our production manager, Helene. We really do work together. I mean, I think that's one of the things that's somewhat unusual about how we produce, is we do work as a team, which isn't always the most efficient way, but we get it done, I think, relatively quickly. And so we have at MTC, we pretty much let people go into rehearsal and we leave them alone for a period of time. So I'm much more concerned with, are we on budget, how's it going in the shop, that sort of thing in the preliminary phase, until we get into the theater.
Well, how about into the run now?
Now
what do you
it's
do now?
day to day. I'm on top of, Helene, all of us, but I mean, I'm on top of keeping on track of the weekly operating expenses. We work on the media plan and the advertising and the promotion, you know, looking at sales, thinking down the road as long as kind of day to day, trying to keep tabs on the company and make sure everybody's happy and that we're running as smoothly as we can.
So you really are, I mean, you're managing generally. Which
yes, it's absolutely,
right,
absolutely.
Yeah.
So.
Well, that brings up, Helene, you've got a hit. You're open. Let's first of all, how do you plan everything from? I assume that you're responsible from everything from the artwork, overseeing that, which I'd like to talk about how that process goes through, right on to obviously opening. You've got the good reviews. Now what? And how do you keep the ball in the air? Because so that people don't forget, or they say, or people coming in and say, "Oh, that's the play I want to go see."
Right.
Tell me how you do that.
Well, you put together kind of a package of press and outreach, marketing outreach, advertising, group sales, direct mail, flyers, and press stories on everybody involved in the play, the actors.
That's keeping it going.
Keeping it going.
Where do you reach out? How do you find the places you reach out?
Well, we look at each play individually. In this case, we had a phenomenal word of mouth from our subscribed City Center run to help us. It really gave us a boost to go on Broadway. We had people that we were turning away nightly at City Center, so we had that to build on. We did a great deal of direct mail to people who had seen Terrence's plays at Manhattan Theater Club. We have lists of people. We took on some consultants, and our advertising agency worked with us to do outreach into the gay community, advertising, direct mail, press and marketing to them. But to really abroad, because the play has really reached abroad. It's not a gay play, and it's not just for a gay audience. So we really have done a very broad campaign.
How about the planning in the beginning, when everybody decided, okay, you're going to go to Broadway, because within the Manhattan Theater Club, obviously you've got your subscribers and you say to people, so when let's say the team says, okay, Helene, we're going to go to Broadway. Now what do you do? And who do you go to? Where do you, track us through that.
Take a deep breath.
Yep.
Okay, we're going to Broadway. We were fortunate to bring in Ben Mordecai as a marketing consultant who had done Angels in America and the piano lesson to come in and advise us and work with us. And with Ben's help and with all our help, we put together, I think, a really comprehensive marketing plan. We knew that if we mailed out, our lists are really some of the best in the city, I think. And we did quite a lot of direct mail and very targeted, specific direct mail. That we knew we could approximate what the return would be and what ticket sales would be generated from it. And that really gave us a base for the first few weeks until we reopened and had that second push of publicity that you get from another opening.
Talk to the nitty-gritty. What was the changes that you made in your budget from Manhattan Theater Club to the Broadway Theater?
Let me jump in for a
minute.
All right. And take a step back. This play is being done under the Broadway Alliance, which is an important element, I think.
Would you explain that?
Inject here. The Broadway Alliance is an organization consortium of all of the unions on Broadway and the League of American Theaters and Producers. Jane Slotin's the director of that program. And it has attempted to bring people together to try and reduce costs, reduce ticket prices, and make Broadway an affordable place for straight plays. They had done a phenomenal amount of work in this effort before we got there. But at the same time, the first, I think, 4 projects had not managed to succeed economically. And I felt strongly that the Broadway Alliance could work, and it could work for this play. And when we began to talk, the artists felt as powerfully about it as we did, that Broadway should not be a place we walk away from for straight plays. Clearly, it's still very effective economically for musicals, but it's gotten to be a very difficult home for straight plays in any long run. And so we began to really move towards that idea. Now, that idea puts a cap on spending. The original cap, I think, was in the $600,000 range, and it put a cap on ticket prices that was sort of $35. And as we looked at that, we thought, well, gee, we're close to that, but we're not really there. So what if we asked for some concessions to that plan to try and retailer it to really make it work? And that involved looking at what the ticket prices were already off Broadway. In this case, I felt strongly that that was the minimum we could sort of go to, and that was $45. So we asked that the ticket price be lifted to $45. We also felt that even with a success, it's too easy, I think, in our business to sit back and say, play didn't work as a Broadway Alliance production because it wasn't a good play. Or conversely, Love, Valor, Compassion works because it's a great play in and of itself. Obviously, you have to have that in the beginning. But it's now imperative that we have the ability to control costs and drive the marketing agenda to help to bring the message out to people. So, in effect, what's going on between these two is every dollar Tori is able to save in labor costs or in house costs is a dollar Helene can spend in marketing. That's a critical equation. I wanted to find one this morning, but I couldn't find one of those little child's toy puzzles where you sort of slide the squares around in a very small box. And I think it's a good metaphor for trying to produce on Broadway under the Broadway Alliance, because the constraints of that plan are very tight.
Now, is that where Rocco came in and made arrangements for the wall to occur, or is that...
He agreed to go forward under that plan, and the theater owners have been generous in that regard, because not only do the artists involved work for reduced costs, but the theater owner waives rent.
Who did you go to get permission to raise the ticket price to the $45?
To the Alliance Board, to the Broadway Alliance Board. And we went and presented the case and said, you know, based on how we've done this in a way before, this is what we know we need to do to sell this play.
Were you able to get any more money for advertising as well?
We lifted the production budget from $600 and some $1,000 to $750,000.
And that's by negotiating with
all of the unions.
All of the unions.
Right. I mean, the arrangements the Broadway Alliance have are that it's not a majority vote because everyone's taking a reduction. It has to be a unanimous vote. So Tori and I together worked very closely with the unions to try and satisfy everyone. Here the transaction was not saying, well, the producer wants more at the expense of labor or something. It was saying all of us together are not going to change the fundamental nature of what they've hammered out. What we want to do is take all of the additional money and put it into marketing and really make the case for the play.
I don't know that we could have done it on the original budget. It wasn't enough money to put the word out about the play, and that may or may not have been part of the problem with other Alliance productions, but in this case, we needed more money. I mean, advertising is phenomenally expensive, and you want to have a visibility, and it costs money.
Well, what's so great about what they've done, I think, is to prove, and this team has proved, that there was a formula that existed but that needed to be rethought and creatively re-guided, which has been done, and proved that audiences really want to see this play. And audiences want to come to Broadway and see straight plays. People have bemoaned the fate of plays on Broadway, but what has already happened, I mean, just now from the time that the show has been running, is that it's been proven that people want to come and see the play, and there is an issue of price that has been addressed, and people are happy at this ticket price.
How large a house is it? How many seats?
970.
How many?
972, I think.
But now, are you allowed to, in effect, to bank your good fortune in having a hit, as Joe Papp, for example, for many years simply used the chorus line as his endowment fund?
Right. I mean, we aren't yet at a point where we're looking at profits or any lucrative reward, but where there is an upside, this is entirely produced as a not-for-profit venture, and all of the profit, if you will, from the Manhattan
What is a
Theater
not-for-profit venture?
At City Center, our organizational budget's about $10 million to produce all of the plays, and of that, about six and change comes from ticket sales overall, and the balance has to be subsidized. So some $3 or $4 million a year has to be raised, and one of the places it was raised for this production, which cost almost $1 million, I think, in aggregate with the overhead and everything assigned before it got to Broadway, was that AT&T stepped up early on and joined in this cause, which is a name we haven't mentioned. A lot of funders will step in, as Terrence was talking earlier about producers, and say, oh, this looks like a hit, maybe I'll get involved. AT&T did the same thing we did. They said, we'll sign on sight unseen. We'll commit to helping you with a substantial amount of marketing, but they also bought us an extra week of rehearsal that I know Terrence felt was very important, and stepped up and said, okay, we're here too to support the play.
Had they been your friend through the years, so that they just continued it?
But in this case, they really went a little further. They went out. They were supporting a writer whom we believed in, and as Barry said, they supported a play that they hadn't read. In the past, plays had been read and evaluated, and a determination was made as to whether there would be support. So this was quite an amazing step for.
How does that differ from the Broadway producer, Broadway production, the Broadway producer, and who also is going into Broadway Alliance theater? But how does he differ in his production team?
From us?
Can he get an AT&T, or does he have to rely only on his back?
You asked Isabel what a nonprofit venture is. It means that if there are any proceeds, they will go back to support the Manhattan Theater Club and future work of the Manhattan Theater Club. They don't go back to an individual producer. We're a nonprofit organization, and our monies go to making the work that we do. Therefore,
AT&T will never get its money back in that sense.
Right, but AT&T supports the nonprofit work. A purely commercial producer is not nonprofit. So they're.
What about the creative end of it? Does the creative end take cuts all the way through as well?
There are two.
What's the difference in their guilds?
The Actors Equity Association contracts agree to a minimum salary that's reduced by 25% and a cap of $2,500 a week. The Dramatists Guild royalties are reduced by a substantial amount, the director's royalties and the producer's royalties. But also, Tori, talk a little bit about all of the other unions.
There's a combination of reductions on the part of the artistic unions, and then the wide, as well as the ADPAM members, the press agent, the company manager. The technical unions all take their changes and variations in the work rules. So there's a much greater, there's an economy of scale, and people where often a position could require one or two people to do the job. One person does the job.
A reduction in crew. You might talk a little bit more about that.
The crew at the Walter Kerr. I mean, we have the carpenter, the prop, the wardrobe, the light board, and sound operator. I mean, they're all doing a tremendous job and working, I think, exceedingly hard. I mean, and you are allowed to make changes in the work rule structure in the theater backstage. You also get support from the surrounding. The ad agency takes. We were able to get we went to the ad agency, we went to our agency, Gray, and we said, this is an alliance production and we're looking for a reduction on the commission. And we were able, I mean, there's no one to whom we haven't said, this is an alliance production, what can you do for us?
Do the advertising rates go down?
The advertising,
yes. They do. So the Times has reduce their rates in this particular.
Does the New York Times, does the ABCs go down as well for an alliance?
Everything, the print and the...
I think some $200,000 worth of advertising probably cost us about 110 or 120, maybe something.
We got 200.
How many other plays on Broadway are in your situation? Are you the only one at the moment?
We are the only one that's up and opened. The Laurie Metcalf piece, which will go into the Martin Beck, is either just started previews or is about to start previews, and that will also be a Broadway Alliance show this year. Yeah, right.
About the Broadway Alliance, I think it's worth mentioning. Joe and I are probably the only two people who are on royalty, and certainly friends have said to both of us, if you'd done the play off-Broadway and it was selling out at the Promenade Theater, you'd be earning more money than you are on Broadway now. Why would you make such a rash business decision for your own income? Joe and I both felt very strongly we wanted this play to be seen on Broadway. There's something exciting about being in those few blocks of Manhattan where there's 20 theaters lit up. These are beautiful theaters. As Brendan said, the Walter Kerr is one of the most beautiful theaters in America. Most off-Broadway theaters were not built as theaters. They're reconverted space. It's wonderful for the actors to have their own dressing rooms. I can use a bathroom midtown. I can cash a check midtown.
When we opened in February, it was the first time in how long, Barry, that a new play hadn't been? There was a space of time.
We were the only new American play.
January 1st, with the closing of both Tuna Christmas and just before that, obviously, Angels in America. For the first time, I think, in the history of Broadway, there was no new play running. Inspector Calls was still running, of course, a great revival.
American play on Broadway.
And there was no American play on Broadway. So as we began, it became important, I think, for everyone involved, not only to be doing this play for us, but to be sort of relighting the candle.
And that was another part of the whole marketing issue, because people kept saying, why are you doing this in January? You can't do plays in January. You have to wait till April. And we all just, there was this momentum. We said, no, the moment is now to do this, and we will figure out. And that's part of why we needed the direct mail was, you know, we were blessed, I think, in that it didn't snow very much. But, you know, we knew we had to get an audience in February and March.
The point I was trying to make, I didn't quite make it properly, is that unless people are committed to Broadway and doing plays there, it will go away as the most wonderful venues in this country in which to see our work performed. And Joe and I maybe are getting a reduced royalty, but we're getting a very good royalty, I think. I'm very happy. The play I wanted to write is being performed on Broadway as I wrote it, and I'm earning a living. And I don't think anyone working in the theater today should ask for anything more than that.
I think what's very important is that it's a play not at a Broadway Alliance theater, it's a play on Broadway. And that's the thing that's important, not to say, oh, it's very good for a Broadway Alliance theater, which is one of the reasons I think other plays that were there before might have failed, too, because it was the Broadway Alliance that was being reviewed and not the play itself. And this is a play, and this is being made available for people to see at prices that are still high, but are still available to most people.
And yet, Isabel, I think as you hear, without the kind of concert that has existed, the kind of oneness, it wouldn't be happening, because the play couldn't, you're hearing about economic issues, and we're facing economic issues on Broadway that have daunted many people. So the artists, in conjunction with the producers here, are saying, let's make this move. Because the same issue is true for the producers. If the play were off Broadway, it would be a different economic structure than it is for us on Broadway. There is a feeling about wanting to light these theaters and to have plays written. And if there aren't plays playing, new playwrights aren't going to write plays. Sure. So there's. What's very heartening to me is the kind of oneness of artists, producers. The entire team is very unified here.
But now, besides all of us making more long-distance phone calls, which we should do, I hadn't heard anything about American Talent backing this. Now, what are they doing to get credit? I would think they would want credit for having helped launch this thing. Are they taking any ads themselves?
They were sponsors of the play off Broadway, right? And they made a substantial amount of advertising investment off Broadway. And
but for themselves, I mean, tooting their own horn.
Their logo in a very small way, despite an enormous contribution.
I'm surprised at that.
I certainly try to acknowledge them all I can. Something we talked about earlier is this fourth week of rehearsal. I think with the death of the road plays being tried out in Boston and Philly, et cetera, I think that's one reason the mortality rate for new plays has gotten so high. That fourth week of rehearsal, all the significant rewrites and changes in the text of Love, Valor, Compassion were made in that fourth week. It takes 3 weeks for a playwright to get a sense of what the play's about, and usually the standard Broadway or contract when actors work is after 3 weeks you go into full preview and full salary. Then you have I figured out what's wrong with the second act. No one wants to hear from the playwright because they're then worried about lights and sound and costumes.
Just upped our next year's production budget.
But I say to Lynne and Barry, I think they will have the chance of having a more successful season with that extra week of rehearsal. It's the most significant difference.
I think having a theater company is a wonderful luxury that you can provide for your creative people so that they can experiment with it.
But it's not it is not a permanent company of actors. No. This show was cast by Joe and Terrence and with Michael Bush's.
This fourth week of rehearsal is an issue I'd like to go to with, say, Joe, to Equity, saying if you could find a way to agree to pay the actors a rehearsal salary 1 week more, the odds of the projects being successful and providing 52 weeks of employment are going to rise so significantly, it's worth the gamble.
It's really, in the end, more a cost issue than a union issue. I mean, when we're talking about 4 weeks of rehearsal, just to help the audience, that's 4 weeks before the whole tech process begins. So it's actually a little bit long. It's really 3 weeks now plus tech and
But you see, there is another element, because you have functioned, because Manhattan Theatre Club has functioned as such an entity and a nonprofit entity and a team. A thing that I think, looking at it from the other side, from the union side, you are not a producer, an individual producer for profit. It is a nonprofit. I mean, there's an element of trust here that I think that you have built and credibility. And I don't know. I wonder. You said that the new play that's coming in is produced by producers. It's not a nonprofit entity coming in.
Which one?
Right. But which are a producing team. But there is but coming out of a nonprofit. In other words, if the unions are going to give something up, in a sense, they're going to be giving it back to an entity that is a nonprofit entity that's going to be doing more stuff for them, rather than taking home.
I guess I'd like to say a word on behalf of narrowing the chasm between nonprofit and for-profit. That today the theater, almost by definition, certainly for the play, is a not-for-profit venture. And some of the for-profit producers have been noble losers of great financial resources in that cause. So I think you're right that the unions have known us. We've been there for a long time. When we asked for some concessions, they trusted and respected us. But I think it's a mistake to go down a sort of bifurcated path at this point. The theater, given cutbacks at the National Endowment, the Department of Cultural Affairs and whatnot here in New York, needs all the friends it can get.
I think the question was, should AT&T or a corporation support something
that's a different issue.
other than a nonprofit venture? And that, in my mind, becomes a dicier issue.
I mean, I think in the old days, Columbia backed My Fair Lady. I mean, they made millions and millions and millions of dollars.
But that was an allied field that they were in, really.
Certainly.
It wasn't a corporate field that was coming into it.
That's right.
And I think the corporate world is taking up a great deal of the slack of coming in, of the arts and endowment funds cuts.
The new commitment that Disney is making to the Broadway theaters, it's certainly going to be a significant
Because that's going to change architecturally, that whole 42nd Street, the New Amsterdam, all those places.
Now, let me go back to what happens to you now. Will you continue this path from the city center and into Broadway? Will you look at plays and say, well, this is something that can be moved?
I think what it does for us, for the first time really, is gives us the capacity to say, it has always been true that the play began from commission or commitment through readings and workshops to full production. Beginning with actually the Lisbon Traviata, an earlier play of Terrence's, we began to produce the extended life of the work ourselves off Broadway, and we did that as well with Lips Together, Teeth Apart and Perfect Ganesh. Now with this and a $750,000 capability to transfer a play to Broadway, I think, yes, we would definitely look to more opportunities in the same fashion. At the same time, I think it's important to say it takes an exceptional play like this, even now, exceptional work, to make it under those economic circumstances. So we'll also continue to produce plays and open-ended runs off Broadway.
Well, doesn't this affect your selection, and it won't, because I know you, but it's not a danger.
We've been sending plays to Broadway for many years now. This is not the first time that we've been represented on Broadway, nor that we have produced on Broadway. The difference with this is that it's under the Broadway Alliance. It's under a different economic structure.
What's the percentage, roughly, between doing it not under the Broadway Alliance and doing it at a Broadway theater?
Probably
half.
Between 40 and 50%.
We did, yeah.
I mean,
we did a small family business,
which we produced ourselves through a for-profit subsidiary of the Manhattan Theatre Club, was about $1.5 million, and I dare say this would have been from scratch at least that. On the other hand, the transfer cost was only about $750,000.
But I think it's also important to say that at the same time this has gone on, we've done 4 or 5 other plays at home this spring.
It's important to say that, indeed. That's where I was going.
There's an equal commitment to that work. I mean, so to me, it's the wide range, and this means we can do this when this is what should be done, but at the same time, There are plays happening in a 150-seat theater and in a rehearsal studio, and that's where they want to be, and that's another set of relationships, and it's those relationships that grow and develop and make a play like this possible.
Well, with such a small group, how in the world can you make your schedules? Or are you already thinking
There
of
are
1997?
there are a lot of people
We've
behind
been
us,
sleeping,
too.
but while one person talks, the other one naps.
But are you already scheduling for 1997? Or
No.
how far?
No.
1996.
Should this
Give me a
go?
break, then.
Well, I just wondered because
What happens if
96
this goes to Boston or Chicago, Los Angeles? Then what kind of an agreement do you work under there with those
Well,
theaters?
we're beginning to look at that now. I mean, first of all, the Broadway Alliance provides for 10% of the profits of the show to be set aside for the unions that have taken reductions. Not all of them, because some take other kinds of involvements. But so that happens in New York. Frankly, the road hadn't been fully looked at yet in terms of what happens next with the Broadway Alliance show. So certainly full Broadway is possible, the equivalent of off-Broadway, but we've begun a dialogue now about that. I think what we want to do first is just get
You
between
say
now
the
and the end
profits
of
go back to Manhattan Theater Club. And what about the creative end of it? Is there any percentage that the director and the playwright?
Well, the director and playwright's royalties go up in substantial ways after the play recoups, and then a piece of the profits, 10% of the profits, go to people that aren't on royalties as a set-aside.
Who've worked on their minimum reduced.
How long do you
I
think
don't quite
now will it be?
understand that. Barry, say that again.
Sure. Let me, royalties, people
Right.
on royalties are on a substantially reduced royalty until the play recoups its cost,
Right.
and then those royalties go up as much as 100%. The people that are on minimum salaries within the unions will share in a 10% profit pool of the play when the play's run is completed. In other words, each week the profits are escrowed for sharing.
And do they return any of their profits, do they return any of their commercial profits to the company, to Manhattan Theater Club?
I'm sorry.
The profit pool, no.
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 But Barry, are
Because
the
he-
subsidiary rights over the next few years will be part of this profit pool?
No, that's related to the production.
How many weeks do you think it'll take to recoup?
We're in the
What are you
process of
projecting?
doing it now. I don't know exactly when this airs, but I would hope that by the time it airs, we can say that's completed.
Well, let's say in general, what was the projection when you had to do the, if
Sure.
you will, the math from deciding to go to Broadway, the projection of when you would begin to recruit? Did you make
Vary
it?
depending on which of us you spoke to.
Right. Okay. All right, Tori. When did you say?
I'm known for being the most cautious,
Yeah.
I suspect. So
As a general manager's job.
I figured by the end of June. Lynn has her own, and Barry was somewhere in the middle.
We're very close, and certainly we had hoped that by the end of the theatrical season, we
You take a football pool on one.
Right.
You know,
But it is companies like yours that we're going to look for the playwrights and the directors. But on the other hand, there has to be a way of feeding back, if you will. We talked about this about the National Theatre in England, for example, that when it goes commercial, then some of the profits of the playwright, the director, the various people goes back to the National Theatre once it travels, once it moves, so that it's a continuous servicing.
That's already in effect, Isabel. When every play of my Manhattan Theater Club is done, fortunately it's been done in a lot of other theaters around the country, I split my money 60-40 with Manhattan Theater Club, what's called subsidiary rights. Money's earned by my plays outside of New York. It's not 50-50. I have the 60, they have the 40. But I've contributed, I like to think, a significant amount, including, for example, Frankie and Johnny was sold at a fairly good price to Hollywood, and 60-40 we shared that.
And the Guild approves of that.
I'm sorry?
The Guild, your Guild approves of that.
Well, yes, absolutely. And as a playwright, I am committed to sharing money I have earned with a not-for-profit, especially a theater that's going to continue to develop me. So I don't think any playwright minds. You would also share 60-40 with
self-interest.
But also I would share 60-40 on this play if David Merrick had produced it. That's why people produce plays, that when you have a success, there is money down the road, productions you have nothing to do with. This play is being done tonight in Santa Barbara. Perfect Ganesh is running very happily in Santa Barbara. We're sharing 60-40. The reason Santa Barbara is doing that play is because Manhattan Theater Club did it so well a year and a half ago. So I have no problem in saying, yes, the play wouldn't be there. And I think, Joe, I don't know what your money is different, no, because you don't have a franchise.
He's being very quiet about it.
No, well, he doesn't have a copyright.
I saw that on your
Joe,
face.
yes.
I
don't
think
have
it's a completely different arrangement.
Yeah. I have a copyright in something called Love, Valor, Compassion. Joe doesn't. He directed a production, which will be, if it's ever duplicated, Joe will share in the royalty.
Being a director in America, a play director, is not the most lucrative thing. And we would be proud to be in the business of supporting directors as much as possible.
In our discussion on the director playwright, part of it rested on the fact that there are only 5 or 6 directors, for example, that make a living in the theater, and it's very difficult for them. And in the small theater companies, they're the last one there. They are the companies.
I wonder how many playwrights there are that make a living in the theater.
Well,
Just
but
having their plays done.
you do have a royalty. You do have that.
Yeah, but
that
a lot of my
the
playwright
director
friends,
does not have.
we all know their names, are teaching, doing other things, or taking movie assignments they would maybe prefer not to because they found it hard to earn a living. Not many actors are earning a living in the theater either. Not many producers. No one's earning a living.
I can think of playwrights that might be 4 or 5 that might be able to go it without, maybe 4.
Terrence, does this big hit mean for you that you're going to have to use up more time? Will you be going around the country with these various openings or not? No. How can you dictate now your own life in terms of your wonderful degree of productivity?
Because I've promised them a play for the fall of '96, and
we actually have to leave now.
and there's certain people really love working in the theater. Joe, he's a young director. I think Joe is not secretly aspiring to become the world's greatest filmmaker. I think he is very happy working in the theater. That is becoming more and more extraordinary in this day and age as people think of the theater as kind of a way of getting into films. And I think Joe's in for the duration, and I know I am.
I think that your devotion to the theater too is so apparent. We're very lucky that it is.
Well, it's made me so happy, and I've been, I still say, you're this kid from Corpus Christi, Texas.
We have to take a deep breath
in New York, working with these great actors.
And everybody has to just take a deep breath, think of all the things that we haven't said, that we're going to say in this next half that's left to us, because we're going to stop for a minute and then come back again and talk more about love, valor, and compassion. That wonderful play. So everybody stand up and come right back again and sit down.
How about love, valor, also compassion? Or
This is the American Theater Wing Seminars on Working in the Theater, and we're continuing our discussion on the production. The production is Love, Valor, and Compassion, and it's the Manhattan Theater Club's production, and it is now on Broadway, and we want to know how it all came about. We are continuing with the group led by Brendan Gill and George White, and they both will elicit who did what and when to bring this wonderful production to Broadway.
Starting with that, there's a little anecdote that came at the break, which Terrence, you might say, or Lynn, about that title again. Here we go.
Back to the title of Love, Valor, Compassion.
Right.
Exclamation point, exclamation point. Terrence and I were reminiscing that he sat in my office, I guess it was in the, I can't remember how many months before, but he was working on the play. And he said, I'd like to tell you the title of my new play. I said, great. And he very uncharacteristically took out a piece of paper. He didn't say it, he wrote it. But he wrote Love, Compassion, Valor. So for a long time, I called it Love, Compassion, Valor, and it took me a while finally to
LCA.
Right.
To change it.
But I thought it was interesting that he wrote it. He didn't say it. I think.
Why did you change it then?
He didn't change it. I think he just.
Oh.
No, I did change it.
It was going to be Love, Compassion, Valor?
Yeah, then I think I did change it. But I guess I thought she would hate the title. I'm trying to imagine it on the page as opposed to saying, what? You know.
Gary has a very good mnemonic for it. Yeah. 1 syllable, 2 syllable, 3 syllable.
Ah, that's why.
Oh.
But
that helps.
I'd always prefer people see them so you don't get into things like the lesbian Traviata. And lips together. Perfect Knish. And we had a lot of legs apart, teeth together. The box office said the variations, most of which are triple X rated. Is this where such and such is playing? Because they know it's lips together.
Well, Valour is that's
Valour.
not so bad. I mean, if you had to do it, I mean, it's better than...
If you'd written the play, it would be like a knife in your heart. Even people have seen, I saw your play last night, and they say, I love Valour Compassion. I just loved it. I said, you didn't look at your program very closely. I'm glad you liked it.
What was the name of your first play?
And Things That Go Bump in the Night.
Oh, yeah.
Which didn't get... No, that lost and a lot. It was Things That Go Bump in the Night. And I'd have to say, no, it's and Things That Go Bump in the Night.
George?
Bad Habits seems like...
No, that one, no, yeah.
Bad
That's a
Habits,
really-
that's an okay one.
It's aberration.
Bad Habits. People remembered it, and next. That was pretty simple. Next.
I wanted to also go, because we are talking about it, and again, it segues into, I wanted to press you, Helene, a little bit more on your work, because I want to talk about, it's easy to say a marketing plan, but I wanted to say, what is that? You know, and also, going back to what I alluded to in the beginning, how did you decide, who decides on the artwork, what happens there? You talked about gray advertising, I understand, but do you make that choice? Do you work with the director? Do you work with Lynn and Barry? How does that all, what is the process?
Well, in this case, through the funding of AT&T, we worked with their ad agency, which was Serena Coyne, and their artists. And Terrence, I think, sat down and thought about images of the play with Michael Bush, is that right? And talked about it. And Michael and I met with the ad agency artists who had read the play and talked about images. And I remember sitting there, and the things that came up were moonlight was important to the play, and somehow, I think you had said the raft, for some reason, stuck in as an image that might work for something. Moonlight, water, and a feeling that it was important that there be life, that there be some kind of affirmation of bodies or people, right?
The first ad that was brought in had no people in it. And I said, no, this play's about 8 men. So an ad that is a picture of a lake, a pretty lake, doesn't reflect what the play's about. Joe, I think you and I discussed it too. I think you saw that early design, and you had some good input too. It's a feeling for the play you try to convey to an artist, because I do think that the choice of a logo for a show is very important.
Yeah, it is very important. And so we were presented with several logos, and Terrence looked at them, Joe looked at them, we made some changes. I remember we wanted to open it up a little. I think it looked more like a swimming pool the first draft, right? We made it look like a lake and added the trees.
Right. Yes.
Who
one
decided
version
where to put your advertising and merchandising and promotion dollar?
Well, let's just go back a minute. We created the artwork, and then we needed to figure out how we were going to sell the play. One thing that we did do, that we do a lot at Manhattan Theater Club, but maybe is not so typical of Broadway on a whole, is we did a lot of research before we moved the play from City Center to Broadway. And we did exit polling at the theater, that's very simplest, quickest kind of research, to talk to people to say, you know, what do you think about the play, and how would you describe it, and are you going to recommend it to friends, and how
What did they say?
describe it?
Yeah, exactly. Great minds.
How do you describe it?
We found, as people were leaving the theater, that they were talking at that point about friendship and love were really the two sentiments that were expressed over and over again. That they thought it was a play about friendship, and that was kind of interesting to us. And we had overall very positive feedback from people, which was very encouraging. We then brought in, I think we did 3 or 4, I can't remember now, focus groups where you bring single ticket buyers in to a special kind of focus group research room. They sit in a conference table behind a one-way mirror, and a moderator asks them questions to find out really what they're thinking. And it was interesting. We did a group of people who didn't like the play. We wanted to find out why they didn't like it. And we did a group of people who really liked it. And there was another group that I don't remember.
Single ticket buyers who had heard about the play but hadn't
hadn't seen it yet, and what had they heard?
Understand the perceptions on the street, sort of in advance.
It was really interesting.
Yeah.
I remember the couple of things that we learned were people who didn't like it, a good percentage of them were really offended by the nudity. And they couldn't seem to get past that. It was all these naked men.
I think there were only like 3 in that group, and the
Right.
other groups were very, very large.
The people, it is true. The people who liked the play, one man I remember saying, "Oh, you know, now that you mention it, I guess they were nude, but I don't really."
No
it was so weird. We always said that they didn't. The nudity wasn't a big deal to them because it flowed with the play. It didn't seem like such a big deal, and I thought that was particularly interesting.
Are you doing any television or radio spots? You're putting it all into media.
We did radio. We've done radio, and we're doing radio now.
Not
television
television.
is not in our budget. It's really very.
It's a budgetary
Yes.
constraint, not a.
Absolutely, we would do it if we could afford
Of
it.
the Broadway Alliance, how much we can spend.
We've done significant amounts of direct mail, which not only is successful for subscription.
Where do you get your list from?
That's really a consortium effort of the team. Part of it was Broadway single-ticket buyers from shows that have been involved before. As Helene was saying earlier, a lot of MTCs, because we're here for the long haul, we go to great lengths to collect the names of every ticket buyer that comes to all of Terrence's prior shows.
We have an enormous database, and actually most Broadway shows now, when they open a play and do direct mail, come to us for our names.
You're much more conspiratorial than I thought you were.
Brendan, I promise.
I'm
I
feeling
don't know
followed
if
now.
Joe knew anything about these one-way windows and exit polls. It's terrifying to me.
There are no rubber hoses.
I
Nothing.
never knew any of this.
I think what's important about it, is, which is why it's not terrifying, is that to market a commercial product, you listen to focus groups like this to change the product. We do exactly the opposite. We listen to focus groups like this to find the right audience to meet the play.
Who had this idea? Is this a new idea?
Something we've been doing for a long time.
We do it for our single ticket buyers and subscribers, and for special projects. We've been doing it for years.
There actually by someone on our board, and we have a tremendous board with, who point us to and on our board, Chris Miller, who's on our board and had done does marketing in her professional life, said, "You guys aren't doing focus groups," like 5 or 6 years ago, and we started doing focus groups.
She stood up at a board meeting. It was after the first focus group, and I had the same reaction, Terrence, about you and Joe, and when I heard about these. And she stood up at a board meeting, and she said, "Well, the good news is that the people like the product." And I breathed a sigh of relief.
What about the single
I
ticket
thought, what
buyers?
if they don't? Are we going to have to start producing toilet paper? The people don't like the product.
It's very, very helpful information, though. It really taught us how to talk about the play, what are the best ways to describe it, what might not work, what might not be the best.
Now, do you use
Barry
that
describes this very well, though, in saying, because I really did feel fearful. I thought, wait a minute, now we're suddenly going to try to tailor our product to what people are saying. And with his usual wisdom, he calmed me down and said, no, this is about trying to understand who would like to see the work that we're doing and getting to that audience. And I think we've built on that and have been building audiences. And
it's also just about how to use the right language to communicate about art, which is a very complicated subject. I'll give you one example that's not directly about this. In our smaller stage 2 play space at City Center, originally we talked about work as experimental, and that was off-putting to an audience. It was scary. They didn't understand it. When we changed that word to risk-taking, they understood it and embraced it, or adventurous. So it's really a matter of figuring out how to do our job well in service of the art.
Yeah, well, one quick other question about, you said there were also the single ticket buyer that had not seen the play. What did you get then? That was kind of interesting.
Well, it was very interesting. I mean, some people said it was on their list and they wanted to see it. Most people knew Terrence and said, "Oh, that's the McNally play, and I want to see that." They didn't know, if they didn't know what the play was, they seemed to know your name much more.
Tested quotes.
We tested quotes. We tested prices. One of the interesting things we tested were some ads that had bannered over the ad, because we are an Alliance production. People said, make sure they know the prices. So we bannered like all tickets $45, and then we tried one, all tickets only $45, and then we tried one without anything. And we thought that they would be price sensitive because what we were hearing from them was price is most definitely an issue.
What did pull?
They hated the ads with the prices, and they felt that it demeaned the play, that it seemed like it was a fire sale, that this was a damaged goods, right? And it was an interesting...
price mattered to them, but they wanted first and foremost to focus on the play.
Right, so we ended up putting the price in the ads, because our lowest price is $15, but we put it down on the bottom, you know, very...
Do you have a scale? What is the lowest price?
The lowest price is $15. What we did is, the price is primarily $45. Tickets are scaled in the mezzanine, and then at the Kerr there's a balcony, and the balcony seats, this is something that was also done on Angels, are available for $15 as a way to open up the market to people who really can only spend the $15.
Do you not promote that, really?
We chose to promote it. We went back and forth on whether that was a day of thing or we would do it ahead of time, and we made the choice to do it ahead of time.
I would think, whereas the only $45 might be, the fire sale, but available at $15 is quite different, and I keep being asked if there's only a price that I could afford,
well, the second balcony, these $15 and $20 on the weekend seats sell out on a regular basis.
Important.
I thought the poster should say the cheapest play on Broadway. But I would have thought it'd been a great selling point. I'm amazed. I'm learning a lot today by just sitting here listening to them. I would have thought, I always wondered why our ad didn't say.
You think you want to be a producer now instead of a playwright?
But also, I must say, a lot of the stuff Joe and I did in the rehearsal room, because they do leave us alone. You don't know why we did a lot of stuff. You know, then you see the show, and now we get to see how you're producing it. But this has been very informative for me. I don't know you, Joe.
I'm glad of that. Do you have a student price? Do you have a student ticket price?
We don't have a specific student ticket price. The $15 is promoted a lot, and we promoted that.
One question about your board. How big is your board, and are they partly professional?
Well, they're mostly professional. It's a terrific group. We haven't really talked about that, but
25 people?
40 people now. Terrence is a member of the board. Michael Coles is the chairman, is the retired partner of Goldman Sachs who ran their international division. It's a distinguished group of men and women who not only provide an enormous amount of financial resource to the institution, we couldn't do it without them, but also, as Tori indicated earlier, a number of working committees assist with extraordinary leadership in professional guidance in a host of business capacities. I didn't go to business school. I went to school and studied as an artist myself, and including with Mr. White over here. And so for me, it's been an extraordinary graduate education in business. They are a great resource.
Mm-hmm.
We have a lot of questions, and I'm going to start right now with the first one.
Hi, my name is Will Garcher, and I'm an actor. My question's for Mr. McNally. In your earlier works, the gay themes and the gay characters have been central to the work, but they've stayed off stage a lot of the time, like in Lips Together and Teeth Apart. What made you feel that now you wanted to put them front and center and really let them speak this time around?
Well, one, I would question the validity of your question. Things that go bump in the night, my first play, 2 of the 5 characters are gay, so okay. I really, it's not, at Lisbon Traviata, they're all gay, so it's been in and out, it's
okay.
I'm sorry, but, you know.
Hi, I'm Judy Rabicheff, JR Public Relations. This is to Barry or Tori. I know a lot of your tickets are low priced, but did you take into account originally, I'm sure you had a break-even point, did you take into account that you might have to maybe send tickets over to Tickets booth? I mean, was that part of your projection, that some of the seats might have to be filled that way?
Go ahead.
And do you?
I don't think, we did kind of classic break-even models of how many full-price tickets we needed to sell, and I think what we looked at beyond that was really much more about the discount mail and how much we would do in volume in the mail. I think we always knew that, you know, we looked through the months, and so I don't think we really took the booth into account. I mean, I think we really were focused on one of the things that the Alliance does is $45, while it's out of people's reach, $45 is significantly less expensive than most Broadway entertainment is. And so we really built the model, I think, in that sense, on how many full-price tickets, and what percentage return we were going to get in the direct mail, which is a discounted ticket, and it should be more like 35.
Do you send any tickets to TDF now?
Yes.
What percentage?
I don't know. It's a relatively
it's a relatively small percentage. We did do TDF mailing through TDF from the beginning. I mean, TDF supported this production as well, and that was very important actually in building our Sunday night audience, and we really used TDF for that.
The other thing I would say just is that we really tried to figure out how many tickets would come from single ticket buyers, how many tickets would come from the mail, how many tickets would come from people that had already heard about the play at City Center, and build it kind of like layers on a wedding cake rather than simply say, okay, we've got great reviews, let's just take an ad and see what happens.
Hi, I'm Lawrence Applebaum. I'm a painter-writer. I thought the play was like a living, breathing David Hockney-ish, very beautiful. And I was wondering, since the designers aren't here, what were some of the transitions from Manhattan Theater Club to Broadway?
Joe, there you go.
In terms of the design?
Yeah, the set, the swimming pool.
It's actually relatively the same, the only difference being all of the vertical space, obviously, that we have at the Walter Kerr. But it may be something interesting just to go back to what you're saying about David Hockney, which I think is true, but was sort of a happy accident because it was not part of the original design of the play. And we were teching the play, and the set wasn't quite working yet. It hadn't all gelled, and we were about 2 or 3 days into it, and it's just very frustrating because the look hadn't happened yet, and the lighting designer lit Randy on the raft, and all of a sudden I thought, oh my God, that looks like David Hockney. And I walked across the theater to the set designer, and he had the same image, and so then from that point on, for the rest of the tech, we sort of started to find it in terms of thinking of it like a Hockney painting, and even pitching the clothes and a lot of look towards that kind of thing instead because that green mound, of the play wasn't quite working at first, and we couldn't figure out a way to kind of get it up there. So,
who chooses the designer?
Well, I mean, we've all.
It's a decision that's made by the artistic staff of MTC in conjunction with the director and the playwright. And in this case, Michael Bush, who I mentioned before, is absent today.
Was working with it on paper and then go to tech. How long from one to the other?
Loy and I don't know. We've been working together for such a long time. Like you said, we have a shorthand. I mean, we just talk about the play. We had maybe, for a relatively simple set, we probably had about 12 to 15 meetings about it. And it advances from just talking about the play to seeing a white model, a painted model.
It's more a discussion on this, and with all of you.
No, it's private, and then a presentation is made in enough time to have input from staff of MTC, in this case Barry.
Does budget come into that?
Yeah, budget definitely comes into it, but beyond that, I think there is this sort of ongoing dialogue. Michael Moody, who is our production manager, is the other person who's very important in trying to budget with Tori early on how to realize the designer's vision. Michael Bush and I spent a lot of time actually back and forth with Joe and Loy over the summer trying to make sure we were all happy before we went forward, because where budget really comes into play is if you get it wrong and you get into the theater and you have to start making a lot of changes. And I have to say here, Joe had a really clear vision with Loy of that collaboration, so we didn't have to throw a lot of stuff out once we got started.
Well, and it's interesting, though, about the carpet, because remember, it wasn't working, and we went back and forth. I remember, Michael, we came up to the theater, we decided we wouldn't throw it away yet. Let's wait and see where it goes. You were very clear about, let's wait and see it's okay. And then you had that moment.
Almost a big blue mound.
My question is directed to Mr. Mantello and Mr. McNally. As an actress, I would like to know just how many changes and how much the text changed during rehearsal, and how much was Mr. Mantello's role?
I'm a writer who does a lot of rewriting in rehearsal. I like to sit quietly in the corner and listen to the actors and sort of get re-inspired, shape things. This play, with the rewrites were more structural than whole new scenes. But I certainly am very involved up until opening night with making sometimes very minute changes. And I enjoy rewriting. I've learned to enjoy it. You have to if you're going to do this for 35 years. Joe and actors, a good director and good actors are always part of the rewriting process. We don't improvise scenes. We don't, I don't know how to put it. We speak the same language. When you have the right cast, and this play was blessed from day one with the absolutely 7 right actors to do this play, and the right director, it's not an issue. People are always saying to me, did they make you rewrite anything? No, you want to rewrite something because you're seeing where a scene is too long. You're seeing where a scene is underwritten. We made an enormous cut in the play of a 7-minute scene the night before the press came, and it wasn't at the play. It's a 3-hour play. It's never going to be a 2-hour play. We knew it was long. Joe asked me to try cutting the 7-minute scene. I thought, well, all right, I'll try it. By that point, I trusted Joe enormously. I knew it would upset the actors involved, and it did, but there was no question the play worked better without this scene. But that came out of trust. If I did not trust Joe, because I would not have occurred to me why the play seemed long was not because it was ending at 11:10. It was because a point had been established at 10:40, and then it was reestablished at 11:10, and Joe said, let's not establish it at 10:40. And I wouldn't have figured that out, and I trusted him enough to try it. I also knew if it really had not worked, we would have put it back. The actors would have been upset for 24 hours. As it turned out, they were upset for a couple of weeks. But
let's pick. I wanted to pick up.
I want Joe to.
Yeah, Joe. And I also wanted to bring up about the business. Was it your idea to have John Glover's character or be the same person?
No.
That was always the same. Because okay.
Otherwise, I'm limited to finding a pair of identical twins.
Well, okay.
That would really make a casting very hard. The Fox brothers, maybe.
Yeah, that's right.
Yes.
No, that was.
We have another question.
Always there.
Hi, my name is Margot Evan. I'm an actress, and I want to thank the panel for their precious time today. I would like to know how much do the producers actually still get involved in the creative process?
What do you mean still? You mean now as the show is running, or in the
stages of it, in the beginning stages and following through?
I think we work as we've always worked, which is we're there in the beginning, making key selections of plays, of people who are going to work on the plays, and how the play is cast and how the play is designed. And then once those decisions have been made, there's a period of time in which we leave the artists alone to work, and then we come in, the artistic staff and the staff of the theater comes in at a certain point when then there's something to look at, and then we try to help make movement go forward. But I'm a great believer in making important decisions early on and then letting things go, and then coming in later when there's something to look at and not interfering in the middle, which is a very it's sort of like it's a gestation time, and you can't pull the baby out and take a look at it to make sure that it's growing okay. You wait until there's something to be looked at, and then talk about what the next steps are. So that's basically our artistic
Do you have
philosophy.
Script readings? Do people submit scripts to you, and
Yes.
how do you handle that?
Yes, we read with our own eyes a lot of scripts, and we also hear plays out loud. We heard Love, Valor, Compassion 2 times out loud for kind of small invited group of people, and then we hear many plays that that we're considering doing, or plays that we've already committed to doing. We'll listen to determine how we want to work on the play.
Well, I can't thank you enough for being here, and I want to thank Manhattan Theater Club for love, valor, compassion, and lots of love. You've given us a wonderful time, and I hope that you will bring many more things from the Manhattan Theater Club to Broadway. And this is just one more of the American Theater Wing's year-round services. We bring you these seminars in order to have you get an insight into what it is to work in the theater. I'm very pleased to have been able, as president of the American Theater Wing, to bring the people here together. Thank you very much, and thank you all for being here.